guys. I'm just logging in a couple minutes early, so I'm going to wait for this to populate while doing that. And you're welcome to comment as we go live. Got the comment bar. I'll take a look and see what you have to say. Going to give it a couple more minutes for it to populate. See what's going on in the world of fourth period socia. I don't think I've had a live stream with you guys yet. First of all, the audio is going to be terrible. The video is not going to be that great. I can't mobile live stream. I have to have 1,000 subscribers to be able to do that. So I'm going from my laptop, which is what I'm allowed to live stream from per YouTube policy. So it is what it is, but we'll make do. I'll give it another minute and then we'll roll on out into the lesson. Who's the one stalwart individual that's in the live stream right now? "31 seconds till we start the lesson, y'all." I know you guys are really excited about that. I'm excited too. Just talk about some cool stuff with primary and secondary social groups, group size, all that good stuff. 10-second countdown. All right, so we'll go ahead and get into it, guys. And we're going to be talking about primary groups and secondary groups. Again, we're just going to review a little bit about that and dig a little deeper into primary and secondary groups and the differences and how those can also shift, right? You can have members of a primary group that are also members of a secondary group, and you can have members of a secondary group that swing into being members of a primary group. So it's not like these groups are set in stone, which is kind of the fluid nature of social interactions. So let's hop into primary groups, just review that a little bit. So first of all, primary groups are groups that meet regularly. So often would be another word for that. Frequently. They meet more than just occasionally. You can't have a primary group where you meet once a year. You can't have a primary group where you meet, once every 5 months or even just sporadically. Meet at regular intervals. Also, in a primary group, there's some form of emotional attachment. So it's not just business, it's not just intellectual. There has to be some kind of emotional connection, whatever that emotional connection or attachment is. And the other qualifier for primary groups is that they're enduring relationships. So think about that one, because you can have primary groups that fracture and are no longer enduring relationships, and then according to the textbook definition, they cease to be, at least on both ends, they cease to be a primary group. Now you can have one individual possibly who still views that connection as being in the primary group, but it's no longer mutual. And examples of primary groups would be family. Your friend groups also would be examples of a primary group where you meet regularly, you have some kind of emotional attachment, and it's an enduring relationship, like family's family, right? And your long-term friend groups are part of that enduring relationship. Just a side note that your book doesn't really cover is that some people lack primary groups. There's a loneliness epidemic in our nation right now, sociologically. And so some people in America don't have one friend, especially adult males. Adult males in the workforce, there are a lot of adult males who say they don't even have one friend, right? So they don't really have a primary group. They may have family, but they may not. Some people don't have family, or at least they don't have family that they have emotional attachment to or that they relate to often. Which brings us to secondary groups, and then I want to get into group size today, because I think that's a really cool dynamic of the lesson. So secondary groups are more impersonal, and they're more task-oriented, which we talked about last time. But I think the cool nature about secondary groups is that oftentimes secondary groups can serve as a platform for transition into primary groups. Right? Like you meet some people at work and you're working together on a project and it's just impersonal in nature, it's task oriented, but through working with that individual, you may develop a friendship, right? Or even like think about a sports team. When you come together for sports, a lot of times you're coming together for a task and it's impersonal. You're working together, but the goal isn't to relate to one another. The goal is to accomplish the mission, which is whatever that sports oriented mission would be. Right? Winning, usually, right? Competing well, developing sportsmanship, developing a team mindset. But through working with people on a team, it can transition into a primary group. You might have a few people that you meet on a team or that you work with on a team on a regular basis that you normally wouldn't encounter in life that you decide that you want to spend more time with. Maybe there's someone outside of your grade group or your age group, but through that secondary group, they can transition into your primary group. I'm going to pause just for a second to see if there are any questions or comments on primary groups or secondary groups. Okay, let's talk about group size. Group size can affect the dynamic of a relationship. I mean, just think about a practical example would be in the class, right? Have you ever seen a class when several people are absent, or maybe like one or two key people in the class that are the more vocal or more participatory members of the class? When they're absent, that really affects the class dynamic. So you have a group, it's a big group, and when people are missing or are not involved, when that number decreases, it changes the entire dynamic of the class. Just like if the number increases, it's going to change the entire dynamic of the class. So adding people or subtracting people from a group can change the dynamic. Just like if you've got a very close friend, when there are two people in a relationship, that's called a dyad. And in that dyad, the relationship is pretty much just give take back and forth, and the interaction is very much back and forth. And there doesn't need to be a lot of thought about how to balance that generally, because when there are two people, it's much simpler to balance a group dynamic than when there are three people, because now you have to pay attention to the other people and make sure that you're giving adequate attention to each. And this is it can be a difficult skill to develop in a group setting or in a relationship where there are several people in a friend group or in a primary group, because uh, some people that are more extroverted may garner more attention than those who are introverted. And therefore, those who are introverted in the group may feel like they're left out or they may not feel as valued. And so, navigating that group dynamic can be very difficult when it's more than dyad. So, when there are three people in a group, it's called a triad. And when more people are added to a group, the more people in a group, the more complex that interaction among the members of the group becomes. And you can have a large group of a primary group, a large group of friends that have emotional attachment that have subgroups within the group, right? So the larger the group, the more likely it is that there will be subgroups within a given group. But managing that group dynamic becomes very difficult, or it can be challenging to maintain unity among a group as the group grows larger. But there is a major advantage to a larger group, and that can be a large group is less affected if a member or if a few members aren't present or if they leave the group. I think of a church, for example. I go to a smallish church. I mean, a given Sunday we might have 160 people, and some people move away and new people come in sometimes. But there's that gap often between when a family moves or leaves and new families come in. And so, if the church was 30 people and a family of six left, that's going to create a huge hole in the group, right? But if the group is 1,000 people and six people leave, the group can absorb that loss. Now, obviously, you would hope that family find a new church home that they really enjoy and can integrate into, and they will be missed, but it doesn't create a massive hole in the group when it's bigger. So group size, one advantage to a big group is that it can absorb loss or gains a lot more easily. Similarly, like if you have a small group and a new person joins, like if you've got a core group of 6 people and a new person joins, that transition period can be a little difficult to navigate at times. But if you have a group of 1,000 people, which it'd be hard to have a primary group of 1,000 people. I'm just throwing that out there. If you have a primary group of 1,000 people and a new person joins, they're going to find a way to integrate really quickly, and it's not going to be difficult for that large group to navigate as much. Now, there is the chance in a very large group that a new person can get lost in the shuffle, uh, but it's also a good chance that they're going to find a smaller subgroup to integrate into more quickly. So group size really affects relationship. And bigger groups, while they do have issues as far as navigating and being able to keep the relationships intact well and running smoothly, they also have some advantages. Okay, so just real quick review today. Primary groups, again, primary groups are groups where there's emotional attachment and regular meetings and there's enduring relationship. Secondary groups are groups where it's task oriented and there's not really that emotional attachment going on. And then group size can affect relationship dynamics very powerfully at times. So the larger the group, there are advantages of being able to absorb loss, but the smaller the group, the less difficult it is to navigate generally interpersonal interaction. I'm going to pause and see if anyone has any questions for me. Okay, I just want to encourage you guys. You all are doing a great job. I really appreciate the quality of work you've been giving and just how you've been staying on top of everything. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me at all. Email me right away. You know, I prefer early communication. So don't sit there thinking, should I email, should I not? Please, if you have a question, reach out right away. I'd be happy to answer it. And I hope you all have a great day, and I'll have a video for you tomorrow.